Some of the life lessons that Civic Scholars program has given me has really changed the way I looked at community, and whether that be entering or exiting community, how I experience a community, and how I think about providing service to a community.
So one lesson that Civic has taught me is that the potential to impact and sort of change things doesn't necessarily lie in our own ability to accomplish certain things, but more so in our own ability to host others and collaborate.
Some of the life lessons that Civic Scholars has taught me is how to interact with people who don't necessarily have the same outlooks on life or opinions as I do. I tend to be very stubborn.
I've always believed that people knowing what it means to be a citizen in this great democracy that we live in is really an important thing. And higher institutions of learning, like Washington University, can really make a big impact in a lot of young people's lives by helping to deliver this educational message and really getting people to understand fundamentally what it means to be a citizen, whether they're going to be an engineer or a doctor or whatever. They are also citizens of the greatest democracy that's ever been on earth.
In terms of Dick Gephardt, who I know, that this is sort of the culmination of what he always wanted to see. You know, young people moving out into their communities, whether they go into elected office, whether they volunteer, no matter what they do, but they really have a good sense of a community, you know, questions to ask, things to do, and there's always something to either be supported or changed, and I think that's really what Dick would want, and I think that's what the program does.
So one life lesson that I've taken from Civic is being able to interact with people on the other side of the ideological divide and learn from them and see how their worldview maybe even overlaps with mine in very interesting, unique ways.
The Civic Scholars program is a signature program of the Gephardt Institute for Civic and Community Engagement. It's a program that is really built to cultivate the leadership of students who exemplify civic leadership now and the potential for their future.
I think some of the life lessons I'm going to take from Civic Scholars is that I can build a civic community wherever I go, and as long as I invest my time and my energy and sometimes my money into the community, I will be able to be civically engaged.
It has been a really great experience to value the little things and take risks, and when the wind isn't blowing hard enough, take to the oars. Civic Scholars has taught me to show up and be present in mind, body, and soul in everything I do.
One major personal thing that I really tried to practice, and it really forced me to practice, was gratitude in situations where things weren't really working out, but I still was like, wow, this is something so new, I'm learning so much, even though things aren't as I expected.
The classroom experience with Civic Scholars program is very non-traditional, so the instructors kind of allowed us to lead the discussions as opposed to being lectured at, which I think is very unique.
The Civic Scholars program is an unusual and unique opportunity for WashU students to blend together their interests in their coursework, their professional goals, and their experiences as citizens. And I think it's particularly important because our students tend to be so interdisciplinary, and they can get stuck in this idea of thinking, I must go down this disciplinary track, without being able to have the opportunity to be creative on how that work can have an impact in the world and develop them as citizens and as actively engaged citizens.
So I moved for a summer to Morocco and worked at the US Embassy in Rabat. I was working in the political office at the embassy.
My civic summer was working with the Chief Resilience Officer of Quito, Ecuador, to implement urban resilience and sustainability policies and measures, which includes both social justice and climate change mitigation and adaptation.
So for my civic summer, I was in Chicago working at 2 different nonprofits. One of them was the South Asian American Policy and Research Institute, and over there I was working on an immigration policy project. And then I was at another nonprofit called Heart Women and Girls, and with them I was creating sexual health and reproductive health information for one of their websites.
Purvi Patel said, just know that it's not going to work out perfectly. And then I was thinking, what is she talking about? It's going to go fine. And it didn't work out perfectly, and that was definitely stressful in the process, but I think I changed a lot over that, knowing that you need to be okay with things not completely working out.
At the end of the day, I can say really confidently with this group that they all have grown so much. And to hear how much of a commitment that each of them have to learning, to growth, and to failure is something that many of them didn't come into the program with.
One of my favorite moments of the Civic Scholars experience was our junior fall break trip, where we lived with our cohort and the cohort above us and the Gephardt staff in a townhome in Shaw, neighborhood of St. Louis. And it was such a wonderful experience to live with these people and have the opportunity to have more informal conversations that we don't normally get to have, in a classroom setting or on campus.
I hope to be working in higher education somewhere. I'm not totally sure where or what part of higher education, but broadly, I think that universities have so many resources and hold the keys to making a big difference in our society.
After graduation, I'll be going to Amsterdam for a month with the Humanity in Action Fellowship. The Humanity in Action Fellowship is a human rights and social justice organization that allows us to understand how to use history to help push contemporary social movements further.
Civic Scholars has really just opened my eyes to the ways you can be civically engaged outside of your career path. So even things as small as voting in the local elections or just staying informed about politics or social issues, those things can really just add up and have an influence.
One of the statements that I start with when we select a new cohort of students is that you aren't the only ones who are doing civic engagement on this campus. And I think that's really important for them to hear, because it tells them that civic engagement isn't a feather in your cap. It isn't something to be held on a pedestal about, but really it's a lifelong commitment. And part of that commitment is that recognition that leadership can't happen unless you are in community with other people, and that being with other people is really how we move the world forward.